Pardon me while I have a strange interlude.
For there is nothing else. Life is an obscure hobo bumming a ride on the omnibus of art.
Along the misty corridors of time, and in those corridors I see figures, strange figures.
Welcome to the AP Strange Show. It's that time once again. And tonight's show is brought to you by Madame Rue's new and improved Love Potion number 10. It has that same great turpentine aroma, but it's guaranteed not to make you go kiss a cop. Madame Rue has worked very hard on this, so we're happy to have her as a sponsor on tonight's program, which is an interview with the rock and roll witch herself, author, one of the original LA punks and front person for bands, dancer, tarot reader, energy healer, Pleasant Gehman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I want to meet Madame Rue.
Are you in need of some love potion number 10?
Who's not? I used to joke about love that I needed love potion number 11 because I see 1111 all the time.
Oh yeah, you're one of those 1111 people.
No, that was one of the first things I Googled when I got a computer. Actually, it was the first thing was 1111, and then the next thing was the Loch Ness Monster, and that went well. But the third thing didn't go that well because I wrote I explode streetlights, and I wound up on a site about it was called Sliders, Sliders, which was people that have an electrical disturbance, which was what I used to call it, an electrical disturbance in their energy field. Anyway, when I was on that site, then it froze, and I got all mad. I had just gotten a computer, and I was yelling at the computer, why the fuck, if you have this thing that I have, why would you think a website would work?
Yeah.
But anyway,
the irony.
Yeah, it was total irony. But for anyone that's listening and you don't know what I'm talking about, it's actually called the EPK, or electro psychokinesis. And it is, I used to think it was an affliction when I called it my electrical disturbance, because whenever I got either really excited or really upset or was sleep deprived or something, if I got near any kind of electronic thing, anything from a radio to like the buttons on a car to street lights, they would start flashing or malfunctioning. One time I made all the buttons on a Jeep I was in go up and down nonstop. You have a really crazy effect on electronics. And later, when I was able to use the internet without crashing it, I found out it is called electropsychokinesis. And years ago, I started channeling it, and that energy to use for healing. And a lot of times when I do energy healing, my clients will tell me that it feels kind of like a TENS machine, those physical therapy machines. Like I don't even tell them anything about it. They just say, oh, this feels electrical, or, oh, I can feel like it feels sparkly, or, yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty wild. I have had what I refer to as recurring spontaneous psychokinesis throughout my life.
Yeah.
In recent years, not so much, but it's only occasionally to do with electronics. Usually it's about just physical objects jumping around in my immediate area.
Oh yeah, I've had that too, but I have it the other way around. I have more electronics, but every so often something will like fly off a wall somewhere where I am, or start moving. But
so I can relate. Have you ever been able to do it on purpose,
to make things move,
or put out streetlights, or
yes, I have actually, and that was my first that was the first moment I knew I could control it. I was actually on a paranormal investigation, and we were on the suicide bridge. That's what it's called. I mean, that's not the real name of it, but everyone's called it that for years because it's a bridge near Pasadena, California, and a few workers died on it while they were building it, but then it became a popular suicide or lover's leap spot too because it's very, very high.
Mm.
It, and it's super haunted around there. It's very haunted. So that's why we were there. But across this little valley, there was some kind of a building. I don't know if it was a city hall or a hospital or what, because it was farther away than you could walk. But I thought, let's see if like, oh, the girl that was investigating with me asked if I could use, if I could like turn out street lights at will. And I said, I've tried to, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And then we both said at the same time, I said, why don't I? And she said, see if you can turn off the light in that building. And so I just turned and I took a big deep breath and I sort of blew at it the way you blow out a candle, and it
Yeah.
totally went off. And then I screamed. And then because I'm pretty loud. And then she just laughed because she knew me. And so then she said, see if you can turn it back on. And so I just kind of like I inhaled instead of exhaling and it came on again. And so from that point on, that was right around then was when I started trying to channel it for the healing. And I used to do experiments on my neighbors. I mean, with their consent.
Right. Yeah.
And everyone started the first time I did it, this was crazy. My neighbor came over and oh, this is a crazy story. Okay, so my neighbor
That's
came
good. I
over.
like crazy stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I'm sure everyone that's listening to this does. So she came over, it was probably like 12:45 or 1 a.m. And she's like, my back is killing me. Will you see if you can do healing on it? And I said, okay. And so I put her on my couch. I didn't even have like a surgical table or a massage table or anything on my old lumpy couch. And I started like concentrating on her and like putting some energy in her. And she started making sounds like I'm sure that our other neighbors on the other side, because we live in this little old 20s apartment complex,
Yeah.
I'm sure it sounded like we were having sex. She was going, ah, oh, I can feel that. Oh my God. Like, so anyway, um, so then I was pulling it out and it felt really, really, it felt like a bulk of energy in my hands. And I was backing up and I was backing up and I finally got against the living room wall. And then I thought, what do I do with this? And I thought, well, I'll just dispose of it into the earth. So I kind of took a few steps down to my kitchen because my kitchen, actually where I'm sitting in now, in this really, really old house. This house was built in 1915. The kitchen used to be a sun porch. So I was too lazy to go down all the steps. I took a couple of steps down and then I just sort of haphazardly threw it out the screen door, figuring that if
Yeah.
it was energy, it would go through there. All of a sudden, these big shop lights I have in the kitchen, I get goosebumps thinking about this. They started flashing on and off, but at the same time, they were going kind of like it was like a nuclear power plant that was about to blow. It sounded like those emergency things you see in
Wow.
movies. And I was looking up at it, and I mean, I still get all the electrical stuff still makes me a little twitchy and weird sometimes because it was so weird when this was happening that I didn't know where she was. My back was facing where the steps were, and I just held my hands up to the light and I said, "Stop it!" And it just stopped. And then I heard behind me, and it was her. Like she couldn't believe I said
Yeah.
that, and it stopped. And then seconds later, I started seeing probably about 2 feet down from the ceiling. There was this really thick white cloud. It was like smoke, and it had these things that they they looked like, either, this is going to sound so dumb, but they looked like check marks or a Nike swoosh that was more solid and it floating around. And I was looking at this, and inside my head, I was like, what in the fuck is happening here? And then I was like, I didn't want to say what it was to her, but I was like, hey, Chris, do you see all this stuff on the ceiling? And she goes, oh yeah, I fucking see it. And then finally it kind of dissipated. I still have no clue what that was. I have no idea what that was.
Hmm.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of like maybe it was some sort of malignant energy that was attached to her that maybe had some kind of consciousness, or did you get the
Yeah,
sense that it was an entity of some sort?
I did, but I've never, I mean, I've seen a few apparitions, but nothing ever looked like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
I've seen like a classic like Halloween sheet kind of ghost, but not looking like the, you know what I mean? Just sort of like a specter, like an outline
right.
of someone. And my old boyfriend told me he thought I was at the head of the bed one night, and then he sat up to touch me, and I dematerialized. I've had poltergeists in this house, but yeah, it was some kind of entity on her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is wild. Have you experienced that again in
No,
energy
I've
healing,
never
or that
seen anything like that. I mean, not with the I've seen some incidents in other places of like mist or smoke, but this was so dense and like really whatever the hell that those check mark things were. I've never seen anything like that before. That was nuts.
that is really interesting? Because I mean, I tend to think of a lot of these as, uh, well, a lot of what we consider ghosts or goblins or demons or whatever they are, as just being something from another plane of reality that won't make sense to us visually anyway. So it's just kind of a odd geometric shape, you know. It
Yeah, I've
makes
seen
as much
some
sense as anything else, you know. So
I've seen some stuff that seemed like a wild just amorphous shape or a geometric shape, but it was never like that. This looked like a pattern for like stupid, stupid like playa clothes or something. Do you know what I
right, yeah,
mean?
yeah, I know, yeah,
Like usually I see something that's like smaller and it's like sort of morphing, moving a little bit, and then it might just disappear. But this was really crazy, especially with the shop lights reacting like that. That was just that whole scenario I just told you was just wild.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like something out of a horror movie.
A lot of things in my life do. My love life used to.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, when you said you've seen other things, do you mean, like, just amorphous light forms, or,
No, I've had
when
I've
you
I've
were talking about something amorphous, though? I'm just
no
curious
that
about
no not I've seen a lot of amorphous things, but I've seen real solid looking ghost cats at
mhm,
this famous punk rock house. And they used to belong to a band called the Screamers, who was like everyone in LA's favorite band, but they never really recorded. They made a movie, but they didn't record. So anybody outside of LA doesn't know who they are. But they lived in this huge old craftsman cottage on Wilton Place, which is in this same part of Hollywood. That the part of Hollywood that I live in and where that is it's extremely old. It's very old.
yeah,
I mean, as far not like the East Coast old, but I mean for LA, it's ancient. Everything's like teens and 20s, the occasional like 1888 or 1889 stuff. But
yeah,
so my friend Brad and I both saw these. Well, first I'll tell you what, before it was the Screamers house, the GTOs, of Miss Pamela and the GTOs, they had lived there
yep,
in the 60s. Um, and then in the 70s, apparently there was a satanic cult living there, and this was the top part of a craftsman
mm,
house where the Screamers lived. Underneath them was a regular family, but their family dog used to dig up multiple cat skulls from the backyard. And
jeez,
yeah, and so that made everyone really think, oh, maybe there must have been a satanic cult. Was one cat skull okay? A cat and like a squirrel skeleton, all right, maybe this is an old place, but not all that. And then when I went there for a party, and I wound up becoming friends with them. But when I went into this other room, this was one night when it was me and Kid Congo, who
mhm,
who used to live there, and then then he used to live with me for years on and off, and then he became a famous rock star, and we're still
Yeah.
friends. Kid Congo was living there, and we were having a late night movie fest, like a marijuana and movie fest. And so him and one of the other guys that lived there was making popcorn. And I walked down the hallway and there was all this black smoke coming, like there was all this smoke in there. So since we'd all been smoking weed, I went into the kitchen to see if they were burning something, like if they'd forgotten about it. But
Right.
no, they were there and the Jiffy Pop wasn't like completely popped. So then I went back into this room, and it was where one of the guys from the Screamers lived, only he wasn't home. And so the whole room was filled with like balls of like oily black thick smoke, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then I thought maybe it's coming from the windows, like maybe there's a fire outside. And so when I walked closer to the windows, because they had these big dormer windows, I couldn't see the windows, and when I was standing in the door with the smoke. So when I walked closer, there was nothing going on in the street. And then it struck me that the smoke wasn't going out the windows. It was just staying there and like moving. And
Yeah.
then I just checked the closet just to make sure there was like not a candle or something that had fallen over, because it was kind of a dressing area like they have in those old houses. And then when I was walking out of there, I suddenly saw like a half a circle on the floor, and then I knelt down and I saw the rest of this circle, and I was like, holy fuck, this is like a circle. There really must have been people doing sacrifices in the backyard. And so
Wow.
then, yeah, and so then I went in there, and Brad and I were having some popcorn, and I told him about the smoke in the hall, and we were standing in the hallway, and then right then two cats rushed by us, ran down the stairs, solid white cats, until they dematerialized into the wall.
Wow.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So you both saw it then.
Both of us saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when I was writing Rock and Roll Witch, I called him up and I was like, do you remember that night at the Screamer's house? And then I didn't even have to say I'm fact checking. He said, oh, with the cat ghost. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it's not the first time I've ever heard of a cat ghost either. I mean, I think that's it's a strangely common thing that I've come
I,
across,
I
ghosts
had
of
one
cats.
here too. Here, but this was I knew who this ghost was, but I had never seen her. This was probably 20. I've lived in this house for a long time. This is probably like 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, a boyfriend of mine he came out from Santa Fe where he was living. We were long distance, and he came out to visit me. And so he went to use the restroom, of course, as soon as he got off the road. And I was outside with one of my cats, because I always have cats. And then he met that kitty, and then he said, "Who's the little tortoise shell walking around the top of the bathtub?" And I was like, "What?" He said, "The little tortoise shell cat in there." And I was like, "She died 4 years ago."
Oh,
And
wow.
I had never seen her before, but she came out for him.
Wow.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, it is good. It's good to know that she's still with you.
And that was what she did, though. I mean, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the story. She was obsessed with the faucet, and she'd like on her little prissy, like
Yeah.
tiny. She was very small. She would like look at the faucet, and she'd tap on things and just walk around the sides of the bathtub. That was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another cat ghost story. As I was sewing a costume on the floor of my living room, and all the cats sort of hang out when I'm doing a project. So,
Yeah.
and most of the time it's sewing. So most of the time, if I put something down, I have to put it in whatever container it came from and close it just cause, to be safe.
Right.
And so they were sitting there while I was sewing, and all of a sudden I heard this huge crack. And then those big giant wooden coat hangers that everybody steals from hotels.
Yeah.
This was in another, this was through the living room door, and it was hanging on a door that led to the outside, so it was in this little hallway thing. And as soon as I heard the crack, I looked up and I saw it split the whole hanger, and then it just like crashed down to right in the middle of like the living room floor, and all the cats jumped in the air and scattered. And then I just stood up, and I won't demonstrate as loud as I was, but I started screaming. I was like, hey, I didn't know you live here, and you've probably lived here before me. I hope I'm not intruding on your space. You're welcome to keep living here. Like, can we just like exist as friendly neighbors? And then I just yelled really loud, and please don't scare my cat.
Yeah.
They never did anything again, but I think that was just somebody trying to attract my attention.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. So it actually broke the hanger in half and then threw it into the middle of the room.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
those giant wooden hangers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be tough for anybody to do.
Yeah.
Um, I mean,
And
I've had
there was
experiences like
nothing
that.
on it either. There was no clothing on it, on the hanger. It was just sitting there like
Right.
a couple of other hangers, just because they didn't use that door that much. And you know
Yeah. I've often had that experience. I think when I talk about my past experiences with poltergeist type activity, uh often it's when somebody doesn't want to hear me talk about it, and or if they want to, if they don't believe me. That's the two times it'll like manifest while I'm talking about
yeah.
it. It's almost to prove a
What
point.
things manifested? What happened?
um Well, I mean, the best example I've told before is that I used to work at a cafe, and it was like a late night cafe, and we'd have bands there and everything, and we'd be closing up around 1 a.m. Or we close at 1 and then have to clean the place and cash out the register and everything. And I told my coworker a few stories about my poltergeist experiences when I was younger, and he was just kind of really skeptical about it, and he was being polite. He just said, well, I don't think you're a liar or anything. He's like, I'm not trying to call you a liar. I just think there must be like rational explanations for the things that happened. And I was just kind of shrugging, like, fair enough. And I mean, this is most of my life I've been interested in this stuff, but everybody I talk to is brushing it off. So I was
Yeah.
used to it. And I went in the bathroom and started mopping the floor, and I just hear this crazy crash and clattering in the room. And he starts yelling, and he just kept saying over and over again, I did not do that. Like, just yelling it. And I came in the room, and he was counting the register out, so he had money everywhere, and he was counting it in piles. And we behind him there was a shelf that had the CD player, stereo for the whole cafe, and stacks and stacks of CDs that we would switch out when we wanted them. All the CDs, the jewel cases, and everything had flown in every direction in the cafe. It was like somebody just took it, like a couple people took handfuls of them and threw them in every direction at the same time.
Oh
And
my God.
they were on top of tables, under tables, like on the other end of the restaurant. And he's standing there like wide-eyed with his jaw dropped. And I came out and I looked around and I said, well, there's got to be a rational explanation for this.
you my boyfriend, he was skeptical about when I would tell him stuff. He was very sweet about it, but you could tell he was so skeptical, and he didn't believe anything. Like, he didn't believe that I could give energy, even though I did it to him on our first date, and he was screaming in the middle of the restaurant, I can feel that, I can feel that.
Yeah,
He still kind of just like didn't really think that everything that I was saying was like fully true or fully,
right.
when he was saying like, what are spells, or how do you manifest things or something, and I would sort of tell him, things, and he'd be like, oh, okay, and kind of just roll his eyes. So one day we were at a stoplight, like, a really long traffic signal, right? And there was this Catholic school there, and all the girls getting out of it had Catholic school uniforms on, obviously. But I mean, it looked kind of like the beginning of, some kind of softcore porn or something. Especially, we were both just staring at them, then and then this really beautiful one, like ridiculous, gorgeous supermodel one, just emerged from the thongs of the girls, and she started walking down the street because I guess they all either walk to school or walk to the school bus.
Yeah.
So she started walking down the street, and I just said, it just blurted out of my mouth. I said, drop something, turn around and pick it up. And all of a sudden she went like that. And then she turned around and ran back and picked something up. And my boyfriend said, I will never doubt your powers again.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I have noticed that whenever I like, when I'm wanting to manifest something but not doing any kind of a spell or something to it, like, I often stand up and yell something and then it happens. Do you ever have anything like that?
Yes. And for me, it's I think there's something to do with expectation. Like if you really think it's gonna work or you're really hoping it's gonna work, sometimes it just doesn't. It just fizzles out. But if you have no expectation at all, or you're in my case, usually I'm just joking around and then it works. And
Yeah.
I don't have an explanation for that. Um, it was a really good example. I was trying to show my son the movie Evil Dead 2 for the first time. And this was an exciting thing for me was to expose him to Evil Dead 2 because he had never seen it. And it was on HBO Max, and I was trying to get it to play. And for whatever reason, that was one title that would not play on this app. So I could play anything else on the Max app, but not that. And I tried so many times that I ended up giving up the first time I tried to show it to him. We watched something else. And then the next night I tried it again, figuring maybe it was just needed an update or something, and it still wouldn't work. So then like thinking of Army of Darkness and the magic spell that the magic words from Army of Darkness, Klaatu Barada Nikto. Yeah, I just shouted that out like it was a magical incantation and pressed the play button, and the movie just started right up. This is like days of trying to get this app to cooperate, and all it took was me saying the magic words that you can use to remove the Necronomicon.
It's so funny. I know.
But
I
it's
always,
weird.
yeah, if I yell something insignificant and then it happens, then my next thought is, why can't they do this with the lottery?
Yeah.
Like, why do I always do it on some dumb thing? I thought of another funny poltergeist thing that happened in here.
Okay.
So this is seasonal, because this was probably well, it was later. It was mid-October. I was sitting here with a friend, and he was on whatever, like, gay boy app, like, trolling for a date. And I was like, I don't know, I was like writing out my tarot for the night to put on Instagram, right? And all of a sudden, like my kitchen, like I said, is a sun porch, so there's a front door and a back door. And I was sitting
Yeah.
more near the back door, and he was sitting like in the middle of the kitchen. All of a sudden, I felt this super cold draft, and October in LA is usually really, really, really warm, if not burning hot, right? It's like one
Mhm.
of the hottest months. So I felt this draft, and I shivered, and I was like, I think someone's in here. And my friend was witchy, so he said, well, I don't feel anything. And then a few minutes later, I saw him out of the corner of my eye shiver, and he said, I think that entity's back. And I said, I don't feel anything. And then I did a second later. And I forgot to mention that we had been to Walgreens of all places because, I don't know, to get something he needed, like a stapler or something, right? Because this was kind of late at night. But then we wound up buying 2 pounds of candy corn because it was on sale, 2 for 1, right? So they were sitting in the microwave, like these 2 pound bags. And so when I felt the second shiver for that, we both started talking. We're going, hi. He was saying, I'm Greg, I'm Pleasant. Like, Who's here? Are you still with us? It feels like you are, and nothing and nothing and nothing. So we're trying to like make prompts. And finally, I just kind of got fed up and said, if you're still here, please give us a sign that you're here. One of the fucking candy corn bags just slowly elevated up in the air and then bam, like slammed to the floor. And we both said, hi, you can stay as long as you want. Like, didn't mean to offend you.
Yeah.
That was nuts. And I mean, just the whole fact that it was like candy corn. I was like, this is like the beginning of a horror movie.
Or maybe the ghost just really didn't like candy corn.
Yeah, or maybe it was just convenient and they weren't
Yeah.
discerning. Like maybe if I throw a pot, like that might damage them.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole like pot rack up above where that happened. Like it's got pots and pans. That could have been chaos.
Yeah, I've had that happen before. The very first time I ever watched The Shining,
Oh
I was
God.
home alone as a kid watching it, and my folks had just gone to the neighbor's house or something, and for whatever reason, it was on TV. I remember I was trying to tape it off of TV on the VCR, and, the it was just one of the really tense scenes. I think maybe, like, the blood coming out of the elevator kinda
Yeah.
thing, and all of a sudden, all the 2 of the cabinets in the kitchen opened, and all the pots and pans just, like, were all over the place, and it just came crashing to the floor. It freaked me out because it was like, "Really? Right now, I'm watching The Shining and the pots and pans gotta fly out?"
Yeah, no, that's insane. I know the timing on some of that stuff is just fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Like yeah. Like that really just makes me think that, well, I already do think that all sorts of forces exist in this world, but like some of those kind of coincidences that you mentioned, they're just too fucking crazy.
Right, and I mean, I think that's a big part of it, and something you've talked about and written about before is the synchronicity factor of all of it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all of that because it's just that it never stops, the synchronicities. And I think I think a lot of people experience them, but I think some people almost don't, or they try to ignore it, or they think it's, the phrase just a coincidence. Like,
Right.
I feel like there's not anything as a coincidence.
Yeah, I think it's all part of an organic kind of holistic system, you know?
Yeah,
Uh, they're all things interweaving with each other in sort of a fluid movement, you know?
I I agree. I had a friend of mine one time. This was not my experience, but actually it was the person that saw the cat ghosts.
Mhm.
Um, he wound up being married to this woman for a long time, and it was great at first, and then it got to the point over the years where they got a divorce, and I think it was kind of contentious. So he went to I forget where it was. It was somewhere in Southeast Asia. It might have been Thailand or anyway, that's not the whole point of it. He went there to get away to just like, chill out, like see the cities, go to the countryside, all that kind of stuff. He wound up taking this trip up to a mountain that was, first of all, in order to get to the mountain, you had to drive from the city for like 4 hours. Then you had to take like, I think it was water buffalo carts or oxen or something like that, like along this trail. Then you had to hike up to the actual mountain. So it wasn't like it was anywhere near civilization, right?
Yeah.
Finally hikes up to the top of it, and the only other person that was there was his ex-wife. Like, what the actual fuck?
That is pretty astounding.
Yeah. I mean,
Just the most remote place in the universe, you know?
I know. I mean, like there, you can't even say what are the chances because there's practically not even a chance of that happening.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's something I think about because, I I think what helps is thinking about all of the things that had to fall into place for pretty much anything to happen, you know?
Yeah,
Any specific
all of
thing,
those things. Yeah.
right, had to happen in just the right order for it to work out. So it's crazy.
That was like
Um,
how I met my boyfriend now of 5 years. That happened through a string of synchronicities. That's in Rock and Roll Witch. That whole story was fucking crazy. It
yeah,
was, it was just like stuff that was so unlikely. I mean, yes, we did live in the same neighborhood, but we didn't know that for decades, you know? And
yeah,
and then just the way that all happened was just crazy. It was nuts. And we both when I was getting ready to go out with him, I don't think that I said this in the story. I do not remember, but I like never really dated people because of punk rock. You know, like in punk rock when my band went on tour, like either you were with someone that was touring with you, like a roadie or that someone from the other band, or like you just weren't, maybe having a one night stand. There was usually never like no, there
right,
was no normal dating in my life. I didn't know what dinner and a movie was, like so many people do.
yeah,
So I'm getting ready to go out on this date and I'm putting my makeup on and then I'm like sitting there telling myself stuff like, well, I guess it's not a good fucking thing to on a first date to discuss the fact that your ex of a 14-year relationship lives right across the patio from you and has a key to your house. Nope, that's not good first date discussions. That was like one of the things. But I was saying it like I was prepping for a game show. So you know what I mean? So I wouldn't blurt it out. So then he texts me and tells me he's coming over and he came over and then as soon as I went out of the door, he said, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit late. I had to fix my wife's remote. Wait, that doesn't sound right. And so then at that point we found out that we lived like 500 feet away from each other. And I was basically living with my ex-boyfriend, and he was living with his ex-wife, and it was fine for everybody
right.
involved.
Yeah, I mean, there's anxiety leading up to, that kind of disclosure, but once it's out in the open, I guess
Yeah,
everybody's
but
on the
for
same
both
page
people, it was
for
nuts.
both people. Yeah, yeah. A level playing field, I guess.
Mhm. Hashtag bohemian. No.
So that would have been fairly recent then, right?
Yeah, but
This
there is a story about that in Rock and Roll Witch because
right.
I could tell that story for your listeners if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I will say the abbreviated version of it. So this was after I was already seeing that boyfriend. And I was teaching in the middle of teaching a tarot class and my phone had to be on and my students knew this because my sister is disabled. So texts and calls would come in sometimes, but if I looked down and it wasn't my sister, I would just ignore it,
Right.
as long as she was fine. Anyway, we were talking about symbols in tarot, and I went over all of them, and this girl was saying that I hadn't talked about this one symbol that was on every card, and she was saying it was kind of like a squiggle, and I didn't know what she meant. And then finally, I made her show me the card, and it turned out to be Pamela Coleman Smith's signature, the signature of the artist.
Oh,
And
right.
so then like I was showing it to everybody and then I a girl had some cards and I was like, bring your cards up here so other people can see it because there was a lot of people in the class and the cards were tiny. And and then as she held it out, she had a tattoo of a hamsa on her arm. And I said, wow, I've always wanted to get a tattoo of a hamsa. And then I said, well, come to think of it, Pamela Coleman Smith's like signature would make a great tattoo too. And then I said,
Yeah.
maybe I'll get both of those tattooed on me. Right then, my phone rang. It was my tattoo artist. He never calls me for any reason. Like I make appointments with him, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
called me up and I was like, you guys, I'm gonna answer this. And there was like, is everything okay? And I was like, it's my tattoo artist. And everyone was like, what? And I put him on speakerphone and I was like, hey, you're not gonna believe this. I was just talking about, I'm teaching a tarot class and I was just talking about getting a tattoo from you. And you called and on speakerphone, he's like, come on, that's a bunch of bullshit. You're shitting me. And I was like, you guys, were we just discussing that? And 25 people yelled, yes, like that. He's like, when do you want to come in? I have space tomorrow. So anyway, that night I told my boyfriend I was getting a tattoo the next day. And he said, are you getting my initials tattooed? And I was like, nope. And he's like, oh, come on, come on, come on. And I was like, no, sorry. And then, we wound up going to bed. And so I went to get the tattoo. And weirdly, the studio was dead, their tattoo studio. And it's usually even with appointments, there's always a waiting line of people that either walk-ins or they're waiting for one appointment to be done. There was nobody there except my tattooer and the other guy that works there. And so the first one he did was my hamsa. And then a
Mm.
girl came in, like right when it ended. And she said, hi, are you still open? Because it looked so empty in there. And they said, yes. And she's like, I'd like to get a tattoo. And he made her fill out this new client thing. And so the other guy was going to do it. And he says, what would you like? And she said, I want to get a hamsa. And both of the tattoo artists looked at each other and they're like, no one's asked for a hamsa for years, and now we get two in one night.
Yeah.
So that was weird. But so then he said, okay, my tattoo artist, Baba, he said, hop on up, let's start working on that. And he had me face down because it's on the inside of my wrist and it would just be a more comfortable position than twisting my arm. Right.
Right.
So he was doing the tattoo and I could feel like where he was at it by, where the needle was hitting. And then finally he said, okay, you're done. And he put some alcohol on it and bandaged it up. And he said, what was that anyway? Was that a magical sigil? And I said, no, it was initials. And he said, what initials? And I said, it was the initials of the woman that drew the most famous tarot deck. And then he said, oh, PCS. And then I realized it was P for my name and my boyfriend's first and last name on it.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's
I know. He never let me live that one down. But it was
oh, that
total
is pretty great. Yeah.
yeah, I'll show it to you. It's upside down now. Or no, I think you see it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, I can see it. And I do, I recognize that from the cards, and it's
I
funny because
know.
it looks like, if you're not paying attention or whatever, it looks almost like a caduceus or like a serpent
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it does a lot. I think that
yeah,
too. But I mean the amount of coincidences that had to happen for that to happen, including the calls in the class and the others, it was just nuts.
yeah, it is bizarre. He just called you out of the blue for no reason or
No, yeah, he called me and then I forgot why he was even calling me. I started yelling at it. Oh,
Right,
he was calling me. He was calling me. He never called me before, but he was calling me to say that he was going to go on a tour for months and if I wanted to have a tattoo, like to let him know because he was only going to be there for like another week. But then it just turned into like I'm coming into he didn't even say that, because I didn't find
yeah,
out he was really calling me until like I got to the store because of the whole thing where I was like, we were just talking about you in my tarot class and he didn't believe it.
wow, yeah. Yeah, that is amazing.
And I
Is
never picked up
the
the phone. That was just so weird because it was him.
right. I am curious about the tarot. Is the, Pamela Smith deck your favorite, or do you have one that you like better?
That's my favorite one, but I mean, almost every modern tarot deck is based on it. I really love Tarot Mucha, which is it's based on the art of Alphonse Mucha, but it's Rider Waite Smith based, but it's got beautiful turn of the century Mucha style art. I also like the Botticelli tarot. It's got, I don't know if you can tell, it's got a
Oh,
little
that is,
gold
yeah,
leaf on it. Someone gave it to me. It's gorgeous.
cool.
I've got a lot of favorite tarot decks, but you know, when I'm doing, well, they're like my kids. Like I love them all, even though I'm glad I don't have like 45 or 64 or however many children.
Right.
Because I'm
That
really
would be
lucky.
expensive.
People on Instagram send me tarot decks. I'm not
Yeah.
even kidding. It's incredible. I mean, maybe because I put up a tarot reading every night the night before, but anyway, I love them all. But the way that I choose decks when I'm reading for clients is I just sit for a moment and think of what kind of energy they need, and then I pick the appropriate deck. Like I'll just envision what deck is right in my mind, and then that's what I use for them.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so it's kind of personalized in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and the other thing is when I do tarot, and I didn't know for ages that a lot of people don't do this. I always use two and sometimes three decks because I like to do the initial spread at first, but then if people have other questions, instead of shuffling from the same deck I just used, because for two reasons I don't like to. One is because that you might just do a sloppy shuffle and some of the same cards would come up and it wasn't really random. It was just because you had to,
Right.
do that. And then the other one, the other more better reason is because if I'm seeing the cards down there and I'm using, especially if it's a longer reading and I'm using a couple of different decks, or maybe three or five, even sometimes, depending on how long we're going and what kind of questions you're getting asked. I mean, almost all the time, there's at least three repeaters. It's
Yeah, that's
wild. Yeah.
that's crazy.
In
That's
every
crazy.
deck, and I kind of like, and the client, if it's in person, they're like, whoa. I mean, even if it's on Zoom, because I do a lot of Zoom readings, they're like, wow, that's crazy. But I always say, I think it's the tarot going all like, just did not already tell you.
Yeah.
You know,
Tarot is like
What are you,
that.
stupid?
Yeah. It'll just keep giving you the same answers, and even if
I
it's not the
know.
same cards, it's telling you it in a different way maybe, but it's the same answer, you
I
know?
love that though. That's what tarot is like. I've been doing tarot since I was like 12 or something, and I still sometimes scream and yell and when I'm doing tarot readings for people, I'm not like
Right.
not a silent fortune teller.
Right.
You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How did like sometimes when I'll have like not just one card like double, but like cards coming in the same order as they were in the initial
Right.
reading when I'm doing a secondary reading, that kind of stuff just blows my mind. Or one time I laid out a reading for a girl, and it was every card that I used was either a 10 or an ace, which to anyone that doesn't know tarot is a one. Like every card in the reading. And I'd never
Yeah.
seen a reading like that before ever.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was wild. I mean, it's really good. I mean, I told her even if we didn't read the cards, like you've got a whole new beginning starting and like you've got a really good foundation for whatever it is you want to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a full circle kind of thing, and having like a vantage point from which to really choose your path.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it
really
was
cool.
amazing. Then the other thing that I used to do a lot, I haven't done it that frequently anymore, is because I haven't had a lot of time. Like I'm reading like kind of nonstop on some days that are reading days. But I used to, for clients, like count up all the cards and do the numerology of the whole entire reading and see what that number was too.
Huh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, I told that to the tarot lady once when we were doing an interview, and she said she never thought of it or heard of it, and then she like was just saying that she thought that was ingenious, and that was really flattering. I mean, we're
Yeah.
friends, but she's like such an expert. I was just like, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a great thing about tarot, and I mean divination more broadly, is that it allows for you to kind of explore and be creative and have your own little flavor with it, you know, and
Yes,
come
it's
up with your own
amazing.
little ideas. Yeah, I might try that because I think numerologically anyway, when I look at cards, I'm thinking, if I draw an eight, I'm thinking of eight, and like the number eight, and
Yeah,
what that means, and that makes it easy because then if you could still do a reading just with like a pair of dice and come up with the same sort of thing.
totally. With
Yeah,
dice, with playing cards, or I mean,
but I always think of. Have you ever read through Cairo's Book of Numbers?
no, I should read
Uh,
that.
It was the numerology book that Elvis used,
How do you spell Cairo like Cairo, Egypt, or in a different way?
like chiromancy, like palm reading. So
Oh, okay, okay.
Cheiro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. I have to get that. No, I never read that. But I've always I hated math growing up, but I love numerology.
yeah, and he talks about the numbers. He uses the trumps from the tarot to kind of as corollary to the numbers, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool, like one is the magician, and he's basically describing the magician and all that. But that
Yeah.
was that was Elvis's go-to book. He would make decisions based on the numerology of whatever day, you know.
Wait, I need to write this down again. Tell me it again. It's
Well, I pronounce it Cairo, but it could be Kiro, I guess. Cheiro.
Cheiro.
Yeah,
Cairo.
apostrophe S, Book of Numbers.
I'm gonna get that. Wow, I didn't know Elvis was like that. That's fabulous. I mean, it figures he would. I'm sure there was people in his family doing conjure or hoodoo, like
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think his mom might have had some touch of that,
totally.
um, but he was introduced to a lot of this stuff through Larry Geller, who was the one that did his
Oh,
hairdresser.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
those hairdressers, like hairdressers are always into woo stuff. I know I'm making a blanket assumption, but I've known so many hairdressers that were into it.
well, there is some magic to hair, there's a lot of magical
Totally.
attributes to hair, and those
Oh,
of
I
us
know.
with
Otherwise, like like you could like if you had someone's hair, you could do all sorts of things with it.
absolutely, so you really have to trust the person that cuts your hair.
That's exactly true.
I only let one person cut my hair, so and, those of us with perfect hair,
I
there's a
haven't had
certain
a
magic
haircut
to it.
in ages, but
Yeah, I'm overdue for one as well,
the
but
girl that used to cut my hair and still would is like I trust her implicitly. And I do her
yeah.
comments all the time. We trade tarot for hero. We do.
So you're doing, like, a reading while she's cutting your hair,
Now
or
I'll do a reading for her before or after, and then she cuts my hair, and then we sit. We used to live next door to each other, and then
uh,
she moved like farther down towards like the beach, like which in LA could mean technically it's 15 minutes away, but with the traffic in LA, it could mean 3 hours or 30 minutes.
yeah. I've heard that about LA.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
um, well, I mean, I guess you gotta hope that you don't have bad news to deliver right before she starts cutting, because she might be distracted.
No, you know what? Like she has never had bad news. And I mean, one of the things about being a tarot reader is you really have to know with your clients how to deliver news that's not optimal. That's what I call it.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, you also have to explain to them that nothing is set in stone. What you're telling them things that could possibly happen, but the reason you're telling them is so they can like watch out for a situation that may seem like it's going that way or. But also, I mean, I've had some really odd readings. I had a reading with a woman that I really didn't I'd never read for her before. Whenever I have a new client, I tell them not to tell me anything.
mhm.
And so, um I was just like, oh, well, here's how I was explaining how I do it. And this was actually just a phone reading. I mean, not just a phone reading, but we weren't in real life together. And so the minute I held the deck and was getting ready to shuffle it, I all of a sudden saw this giant sign in my head on a brick wall, and it was a neon sign, and it said incest. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on with this? Like, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck that was, but I'm just gonna move it aside because I'm gonna read for this really nice lady. And so then I was like, okay, I'm just shuffling the cards. So I'm going to call him out so there's not dead air, but that's not the reading. And she said, oh, okay. And so I started doing that. And then I said, give me a moment to look at them. And then she said, you know what I really want to know? This is my main question. That my children who are adults are just about to meet their father. And he's been in jail for most of their lives because he molested them when they were young. And I screamed, "What?" like so loud. And
Yeah.
then she said, I know, it's horrible. And I said, no, no, I wasn't gonna tell this to you, but this was what I saw. And she's like, oh my God, really? And I mean, she was like, yeah, I mean, we wound up like bonding, and she became a client. And then she said everything. I haven't talked to her in a while, but at one point she told me that everything I told her always happened. And so many other people tell me stuff like that, not with incest attached, but it makes me feel, I mean, I'm really grateful. It makes me feel really humble. Like, I don't know how I can do this or energy healing. I just know I can do it. And like, I'm not even getting teary now. I don't understand how this stuff works, but I just know it does. And it blows my mind every day, for real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I mean, I'm sure
it's
you too.
yeah, no, I've had similar experiences, and a lot of variety with it. So like yeah, sometimes when you have a dream that comes true,
Oh,
some
yeah,
of that sometimes is pretty wild. Um
totally.
and even after having a lot of it's hard to express to people that maybe don't have the same kinds of experiences, that even if you experience stuff regularly, there are new ways that whatever the phenomena is will find to blow your mind. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, you kind of can't explain that kind of stuff to people. Um, and some people that don't get it, I feel sorry for them. I don't know why. I mean, sometimes I think that being psychic or being woo woo or whatever, like magical, whatever you want to call it, sometimes I think it's like the same as if you got green or blue eyes, or if you had long legs, or if everyone in your family had curly hair. Like it's super genetic or something. I don't want to. I'm not one of those people that's like snobby about it, come from a long line of witches or anything, but I knew that like my great grandmother was a fortune teller, not professionally, and I think that on my father's side, that there was some powwow going on because they were Pennsylvania Dutch. So I don't know if they were dabbling
Hmm.
or, like, I don't know, but I can't tell if it's hereditary or not. But I just know that my first psychic experience happened when I was like 3.5 or 4, and it's just has never stopped. But I couldn't say stuff like that to people in school. I mean, even in kindergarten, I
Right.
couldn't.
No, I know the feeling. Yeah. I feel like it wasn't until I mean, I was playing music and around a lot of artists and poets and stuff like that, and I was a
And then that
performer.
was
So
okay.
I was around weird people, and they knew that I was into this stuff, but it was always kind of superficial for them, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, "Oh, you like ghost stuff, right?" And then I'd start talking about some of my experiences, and they're kind of backing away slowly, like, "Cool, cool, I'll be over here." So, it really wasn't until fairly recently, it's like I started getting online and, I realized on Twitter, there's a lot of people that I've heard on, the radio shows or podcasts or seen on TV or read their books, and they're like, "Oh, they're all here. I can just
Yeah.
follow them and see what they're up to." And now I'm friends with a lot of those people. It's like wild how that works.
I
But
know, it's crazy. It's cool.
I'm glad the internet exists because I in the last 5 or 6 years have been able to talk about a lot of stuff that I have never really had an outlet for. So I'm grateful for that because it all just gets weirder.
I know, I get that. It keeps getting, well, I mean, I liked your profile for ages. I don't know if there was a gap between me liking stuff and then following you, and then I can't remember like when we started like actually talking or DMing or just like writing back on. But your stuff, I was just like, this person's great. Like, no, really. Like I could, you had a warped sense of humor and you put up good stuff. Like I love
Well, I really,
that you or anybody can meet anybody like that now online.
it's amazing, right?
It's incredible. I have two friends that are like seriously, they're like I would say they're best friends, but I've never met them in real life. Like we met in the pandemic.
Mhm.
And but like we talk every day. I mean,
Yeah,
I have a ton of real life friends, obviously too. But I mean, this is like people where I have no idea what their house looks like. I didn't even know what they actually looked like unless they were posting pictures. it was,
right.
it was great, you know?
Yeah, I mean that was some of my first impressions of you as when I'd see your posts. I'm like, oh right, she's a tarot reader, and then I'm like, wait, she was in what band? Like, oh, she's a dancer too. I'm like, what doesn't she do? I would get confused. I'm like, is this the same person in all these?
I
You've
know
got many lives packed into one life. So
someone on Twitter like a couple of weeks ago, like that someone that I don't even know. I mean, she didn't send me a DM. She just wrote a post. I think because like we didn't follow each other, or I didn't follow. I don't know how that works, but she wrote a post to me saying there's someone else that just put your tarot reading up, and their name is Princess Farhana. And I just said thank you so much for having my back, but that's my dance name. Like I
right.
just separate account. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have separate profiles for these too. I think I'm following you on all of them. So
Yeah, well, I used to like the dance one used to be way more only dance,
right.
but also Farhana, it means Farhana, it means pleasant in Arabic. And so when I was touring around so much for belly dance and burlesque, I was often in Egypt for dancing, and nobody could pronounce pleasant there. And so everyone would be like, "What? What?" I'd say pleasant. What? What? And finally I'd go, Farhana. And they'd be like, "Oh, Farhana. Like, why didn't you tell me to begin with?" Like
It is great for a name. It's got a great ring to it.
I know it's good. And because when I was little, I all my sisters and cousins all had names that had A's at the end of them that sounded like pretty girls' names, like Miranda and Jessica, and stuff. You know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
my name's only a word, but my name was a word because they were told I was going to be a boy. My
Uh,
parents, and then my mom picked out the name Andrew, and as soon as I was born, the doctor said, "Congratulations, you've got a beautiful baby girl." And my father said, "What a pleasant surprise." And my mom went, "I'm not naming her Andrea. I hate that name."
yeah.
So I didn't have a name for a long time, or not a long time, but like a week and a half or 2 weeks or something. I was just baby. So that's my real name.
Wow. So they had to
Yeah.
mull it over. But like Pleasant does kind of sound like a New England witch name though.
I know it
Like
does. It sounds like early settler stuff. And
right.
then, yeah.
Like there
And
were a
then
lot of
my dad's
witches.
side, they were what?
There were a lot of witches in like folklore named like Goody.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. And there was like on my father's side, which is where my last name Gehman, that's like all Pennsylvania Dutch, and they all have names that are like honor or valor or charity, or so I think that was also how they decided on Pleasant too, because it had all that otherish kind of early settler
wow.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. But
cuckoo.
you kind of grew up around my neck of the woods. I learned from your book.
Yeah, I did.
You were in Connecticut, right?
Yes, I was in Connecticut, but also I went. Wait, where did you live in Massachusetts, right?
Right, right.
Well, I was in boarding school in Northfield for a year and a half or 2 years.
Okay, I'm familiar
So
with that area.
yeah, I used to hop trains there. Like, I mean, for recreation, not as part of the school.
Right. Extracurricular train hopping.
I know, no, like we would go to Greenfield, Massachusetts, where there was kind of a rail yard there, and just like hop trains and do weird shit. And we used to get wasted on the train bridge over the Connecticut River.
Mhm.
In the middle of the Connecticut River, that was intelligent because one time a train came and it was coming around the bend and we were all really high and I was like, you guys, there's a train coming. And this was in the 70s. They're like, you're just wasted. And I was like, no, there's really a train coming. I saw it because it was this snaky
Right.
way. And no one believed me. And then as it was coming around onto the bridge, it blasted a horn, which I think they do all the time, like in case there's a boat or
Mhm.
something underneath it. But then we all had to run down the ties and then dive off the sides of the banks. That was crazy. That was scary.
Yeah, I did my share of
Insanity.
railroad walking when I was a kid.
In
Those trains
Massachusetts.
really can sneak up on you. You know, you're like
I know.
you think
Like
you'll hear it from miles away, but you don't always. Yeah,
by the time you see it, it's too late,
right.
pretty much. I mean, we were so lucky. We really could have died that day.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a close call or two doing that very same thing. Not on a bridge though. I jumped down a steep embankment and ended up in a couple acres of pricker bushes that I had to walk out of.
Oh God. Yeah, we rolled
So,
down the embankment, but it was all that kind of like cinder stuff, like
right.
whatever that like we all got, but none of us got run over, but we really could have. The train was so close behind us, it was nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, you want to know something weird though? Someone for a present a couple of years ago gave me two railroad spikes to for house protection.
Yep.
And he'd just gotten them off eBay and he gave them to me with the papers. And the thing that was weird was that this was from that same stretch of railroad going across the Connecticut River. Isn't,
Wow.
that is bizarre. Like, what are the chances of that?
That is wild. And I know the bridge you're talking about. I've been out there before.
Yeah.
Um, one of my favorite bookstores is out that way, the Montague Book Mill.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. I've bought a lot of good books there.
I
But
know you get great books. You have killer books.
yeah, I've started showing them on YouTube. I don't know if you saw any of those posts, but
No, I
showing them
will.
off in little YouTube videos, a couple books at a time. Well, I will say, in the interest of wrapping this up a bit, that like I said, looking at your being friends with you on Twitter and kind of without, you don't want to just say like, so who are you to a person. Putting it together, I'm like, well, she does lots of things, and I had to buy your book just to get a fuller idea. And
Ah,
Rock and Roll Witch is a great read, I have to say. Your writing is really good. You always bring me right into the scene, and I was really happy to read it. And I'm like, wow, she must have been writing for a long time. Was that something that came early with with the tarot and everything? Is
yes, it
writing?
was it was even before that. Both of my parents were writers, and this is just a dumb, funny story. I started my first real book that I wrote was when I was 8, but when I was really little, I would draw pictures and I'd bring them to my mom. And a lot of adults wrote in cursive, which
Hmm.
now people are saying is a lost art. If any of you are youngins listening to this, cursive was also called script, and it looks unintelligible unless you can read it. So
Right.
anyway, when I was like 3 or 4, I'd draw all these elaborate pictures of like I used to draw really crazy stuff like kids and the children's crusades and just wild stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. My mom saved all of them, luckily, because then I was looking at them going, wow, I was a pretty odd child. but I'd go marching in and say, read this, mommy. And then she'd act like she was reading it, but it was just me drawing a bunch of squiggles. But to me, it
Mhm.
was the text, right? So she'd start improvising, and I'd be like, that's not what it says. I thought she
Yeah.
was like, trying to pull a fast one on me. I thought she was just joking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, in the interest of plugging your book, it is a great read. It's got a nice mix of paranormal and like strange coincidence stories and rock and roll and just kind of, really wild tales. So,
Thank
and
you.
but to round this out, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up because I love birds and I love contact with animals.
Oh,
So
okay.
I have to get you to tell my listeners about the Ramones ducks.
Okay. Well, this actually has a little bit of supernatural stuff in it.
That's excellent.
For
Supernatural
real.
ducks is where it's at. Yeah.
Okay, and well, also it's okay, so for anyone that's listening, my boyfriend, the one that I've been talking about this whole episode, his name is Coyote Shivers. Um, during the pandemic in LA, and as I'm sure with other places, all the parks and beaches were closed. You couldn't go anywhere to public places. So I live on a street that's not that far away from Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and I figured since it was privately owned and but still yet open to the public, like if people wanted to visit their loved ones or whatever, that I would
Yeah.
go there. So I started feeding the ducks and the feral cats there. And then I started going down every day because I could just hang out there. I didn't have any obligations. And it was absolutely beautiful and peaceful and quiet. And I love all kinds of animals. And the cats got to know me and the ducks got to know me. And so then Coyote finally said, what the hell are you doing? Are you doing witchcraft all day at the cemetery? And I said, no, I feed the ducks. And he lit up like a 5-year-old. He's like, there's ducks there? And I was like, yeah. So he came and we spent an afternoon doing that. And then he was again like a toddler in a really good way. He was bouncing up and down, going, can we do this again tomorrow? And I was like, I do this every day. So it was only a matter of time until um I just said, let's try to train the ducks to follow us around the lake. And he said, how? And he said, you train dogs. I've trained cats that are trained like dogs. Why couldn't we train ducks? We'll just do it. We'll
Mhm.
use the same methods. So we started doing that, like talking to them and like low encouraging voices and dropping seeds and stuff. By the way, we never feed the ducks bread. Bread is not good for ducks for anybody that's listening. Just like it's not that good for humans, but it's really not good for ducks.
Yeah, that's a good disclaimer because
Yeah.
people do feed the ducks and bread and yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad for them. Don't do that.
Or like even at the cemetery, sometimes when it was still open, people would be feeding them like potato chips and Cheetos and stuff, which is just horrible. And I
Yeah.
know they're all meaning, but they don't know. Anyway, back to the ducks. So we started doing that, and then um, Coyote had this idea because we were always parking it at Dee Dee Ramone's grave, and
Mhm.
because there's two Ramones buried there. There's Johnny and Dee Dee, and we both love Dee Dee, but also Dee Dee's at one end of the big giant lake there, and Johnny's at the other one. But so we would park near Dee Dee and just walk down the slope, and they had swans and all sorts of ducks and geese, and there was also peacocks walking the grounds. Anyway, the next thing I knew, like everyone was following us around the lake. And then right after that, in quick succession, which I didn't know he was doing, Coyote had been sampling all the sounds of the animals. And he comes over and we go down to the cemetery and we decided we were going to try to teach them to run up to Dee Dee Ramone's grave, like from the
Yeah.
lake. And he'd gotten Blitzkrieg Bop, and he took Joey Ramone's vocals out and just inserted like swans and ducks and geese quacking in the same rhythm. So it's called Ducks Creek Bop, but it's like whack 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 whack.
Yeah.
And so because we had hours, this never would have happened without the pandemic. Like we trained them and they all started doing it, and then it started being like Pavlovian, and there was these black ducks that were following us around that were raised by our friend Daniel, and
Mhm.
they had been he hatched them from eggs, and they learned how to swim in his bathtub. So they were following Coyote and I like a dog would follow someone. And they were the first, and when they started coming, all the other birds started coming, and then it went to the point from like not just 5 black ducks with like a couple of swans and like another bird or two. At the height of it, there was like seriously anywhere from 35 to 100 birds there daily, like migrating birds, and everybody came to Quacks Creek, Ducks Creek Bop. I mean, and this was all just our pandemic thing until very like right when things opened up in 2021. A few people started coming by the cemetery and they saw what we were doing and they were astounded. But one person in particular, this writer named Dan Ozzie, who had just had like a big feature in Rolling Stone and had a
Yeah.
book stuff, anyhow, he we didn't know it was him. We talked to anybody that asked us questions about the ducks, and people always wanted to take pictures and hang out and watch it, even though there
Right.
wasn't many people there yet. Later it got crazy, there was crowds around it. But so it was him and his girlfriend or a girl, and they were just asking questions like, do swans have teeth? Just stuff that nobody would know, like
Right.
around. And so then the next day and we had already started keeping an Instagram because I had the only thing on my phone was pictures of witchy women stripping, like videos of that, or ducks.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can't get rid of my show, Bell Book and Candle stuff, but I got to start doing something with all these duck videos. So I started the Instagram. And so the Instagram got a message from this woman named Brenna Ehrlich from Rolling Stone. And she said, can I ask you a few questions about the ducks? And so we said, sure. And um, she asked a few questions, and then I, I kept having to jump on and off Coyote. We're both on the phone, but it was one of my days for tarot readings, and I had to take readings as they came in because
Yeah. Yeah.
I was working for a store. So anyway, I was done with a couple of readings, and then all of a sudden, Coyote texted me something and he said, look at this. And it was like, it had come out 2 hours later as a full blown feature in Rolling Stone. And the headline said, punk rock ducks run up to Dee Dee Ramone's grave every day. And it went viral around the world.
Oh, it's amazing.
It was a
Because I
giant
remember when
story.
that
I thought it was going to be like in like 3 lines in a gossip column or something.
right. I remember when that happened because I saw the article. I'm like, wait a minute, and I looked at it. I'm like, I know her. That's
We,
awesome.
Coyote and I do lots of crazy things all the time. We're known parade crashers. We crashed the Hollywood Christmas parade a bunch of times. I don't know. We like to have fun.
Well, that's what it's all about.
I
So,
know. Magic and fun, as long as you're not breaking the law.
speaking of magic and fun, while we're in the wrap up here, you were also in a documentary called The Magic Show
Yes.
recently. That's pretty exciting. Good stuff.
So exciting. I can't wait to see it. Like I don't think anyone's that's been in it has seen it yet.
Yeah.
But Richard Metzger, I admired him for ages, and he got a hold of me one day, like this was a long time ago. Um, and we met for dinner when he came out here, and he told me about the project, and I was like so honored to be in it. And then we got to be really good friends. He's
Yeah, I
wonderful.
mean, it seems like there's just the names that are involved with that documentary. It's going to be great to
Yeah,
finally see it when I get an opportunity. I can't wait to see it personally.
I
So
know. Everyone that's
yeah.
in it wants to see it. There's like the most well known, and probably I'm just saying this because I'm one of them, like the best of magical people. Um, like I think he pretty much handpicked the people that he wanted.
Mhm.
So I'm so honored to be in it, and some of the people like are I'm saying this in big air quotes. They're household names for anyone that's into magic stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
everyone would know who at least quite a few of them were.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm
yeah,
looking forward to seeing that when I do get a chance.
yeah.
So all right. So I think we're kind of in that wrap up phase now. Where can people find you? It seems like there's a bunch of places people can find you online, but
And yeah, on Instagram, my name is Princess of Hollywood on Instagram, and you'll see pictures of me. On Twitter, I'm Pleasant Gehman 1 because I wanted it to be Pleasant Gehman 11, but that was too many characters for Twitter. um, I'm on Facebook, not that much, but I'm under my own name, Pleasant Gehman. And then there's pleasantgehman.com. You can order Rock and Roll Witch. You can get tarot readings from there. Or you can also, if you want a reading, whether it's like Zoom or phone, um, you can go to the Green Man store, which is also you can find them on Instagram. It's 2 words, the Green Man store. I work through them on Wednesdays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and I also do other readings like quote quote private readings like whenever they can be scheduled. So that's what when you would go to my website and we can do Zoom or phone or sometimes in person, like depending on where you are. Or if you want to fly me out to like, Barbados to read for you.
it's worth a try, right? Yeah.
Or someone, Monaco, Barbados,
Yeah.
Fiji.
There you go. All right. Well, this has been a blast as always. I always enjoy talking to you. So,
Thank
um,
you so much.
thanks for coming on my show. So, I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, talk soon.